Welcome to the Boris Dirk podcast. No longer the PodSham Pod, full rebrand, new playoffs, new us. Max, how you doing?
I'm hanging in. I may have just torn something in my knee playing basketball, but we pod nonetheless.
We love Doris Burke. We love Boris Diaw. We love Dirk Nowitzki. I can't believe I didn't just do the V. I did a full W, but all right. We got to talk about the playoffs. And we just watched the Kings win game 2 of the Warriors series. Do you still have the Warriors winning that series? Because I know you picked them before the playoffs.
Yeah, I picked them before. I was honestly leaning towards them doing it in a quick fashion, like 5 or 6 games.
Yeah.
But this Kings team has. I'm going to stick to my guns and still pick the Warriors to win. Though I think it would be very surprising if it doesn't go 7. And picking the Warriors to win a game 7 on the road with how they've played this year is certainly not confidence inspiring. But the Kings have really impressed me with how they've played. Their lack of playoff experience hasn't shown at all. They've had a counter punch for every punch that the Warriors have thrown in this series. Even just in the game tonight, you had Monk making big plays in transition. Fox hit a giant 3 down the stretch. Sabonis was just bullying the Warriors physically all night long.
Yeah.
Helped get pretty much everyone on their team into foul trouble. Got Draymond kicked out of the game. Looney in foul trouble.
I've watched both of these games in full, and I'm more impressed by the Kings than I am worried about the Warriors. Like I think the Kings, just every time I think I know who they are, they're a little bit better. So
Yep.
cool times for them. I'm still gonna pick the Warriors. Like you said, I have no fucking idea how they're gonna win in a game 7 away. But like, I just watched them play 2 games in Sacramento that I thought they were gonna win at
Right.
various stages.
I will
Whatever.
say, if the Warriors do lose, I think it is uh, an indication that the regular season does matter because the things that plagued them tonight, between being sloppy with the ball, turning it over, and it wasn't just, some of their role players. Steph was turning it over. Poole had a couple just horrific turnovers or missed layups that were essentially turnovers in the second half, or missed step back threes that are basically shot turnovers. And then fouls. They just could not stop fouling this whole game. And all year, they were among the worst teams in the league at fouling their opponents. And you build those habits in the regular season, and so far they're translating to the playoffs.
You know what though? Andrew Wiggins looks really, really good.
He
And
does.
I find it impossible to believe that the Warriors are going to lose the series with how confident Wiggins looks. Like
He's the reason.
he's usually the litmus test, and he's been so locked in since he came back tonight. I thought he looked so smooth. He did not look like out of rhythm offensively. You figured
Yep.
probably his defense will be ready, but he might need a couple games to find his rhythm. He is like locked in on offense. Often looked more like a reliable bucket than Steph. Off night Mitchell coming through. He looks like a playoff guy. And yet I'm a dumbass and I keep live betting the Warriors. But we talked about this outside of the pod since we don't pod anymore, but shit's coming. We talked about how much of a nightmare it is when there are like predictable game 1 upsets in these
Yep.
open series. Just how our podcast feeds become terribly repetitive and reactionary. I don't think that's the right use of reactionary, but it should be the right use of reactionary. And so yeah, there's been nothing good to listen to. So we're creating the pod we want to hear. But like the Warriors drop game 1 and it's like, oh God, now we're gonna have to hear about how Sac is like, a real contender. I'm still not buying it. They have to prove me wrong. The Warriors have to prove me wrong. They're sort of the LeBron of teams. Like I'm never gonna quit on them until like they are confirmed washed. And yeah. So
Yeah.
let's get
Pretty.
away. Let's get away from that series.
Okay. And just one last thing I'll say on that. First of all, it was super impressive to see Davion Mitchell hitting that big 3 down the stretch. Like, you
Yeah.
think of him as just the guy that they're sort of throwing at Steph to make him uncomfortable, or Jordan Poole. But when he's also hitting a big 3 to kind of cement your lead late in the fourth quarter, that's just icing on the cake. And if he can become a good shooter, like, he's got a great future as an NBA player. And then the last thing I'll say about that series is just, I do have faith in the Warriors, but everything the Kings are getting offensively is so much easier right now. than
Yeah.
everything the Warriors are getting. Like it's open threes, it's Fox getting to his little sort of zone between the paint and the restricted area where he seems to shoot about 70%. At least he's doing that so far. Or Sabonis inside. Whereas for the Warriors, especially down the stretch in that game, it was a lot of hunting difficult threes. They weren't getting many easy looks inside. I think Mike Brown's done a tremendous job in drawing up a defensive game plan. At least tonight, it was a high scoring affair in game one, but tonight it was very impressive.
Yeah, I'm checking right now what Alex Len's plus minus was because it also feels like in the minutes that Sabonis is off the floor. Okay, Sabonis played 40 minutes tonight. So 8 Alex Len minutes, they were a +7. It's still something, and that's it comes down to the
Yeah.
margins in these tight series. Like you just expect the Warriors to gain a few points back in the few minutes that Sabonis sits. But yeah, things look very easy for the Kings on offense as they have the whole season.
Yep.
And Davion looks like a better GP2. He's there. Right now he's doing what I mean, and Gary Payton's making a lot of winning plays too. Gary
Mm-hmm.
Payton kind
Mm-hmm.
of does the things that Russ did last night for the Clips all the
Yep.
time. But yeah, okay. Before we move on, I just want to shout out some individual players whose seasons are over. Because I just was thinking about them. I was like just admiring these guys from afar. Like Brandon Ingram, he wasn't as good as SGA in that playing game, but I can't believe how good he's gotten. I can't
Mm-hmm.
believe how mechanically gifted he is at this stage. Like how refined his mid range game is. How strong his vision is at that size. Like I feel like for a guy that has like at least in college was labeled as sort of like lackadaisical, will he put it all together? Is he Andrew Wiggins? At least Andrew Wiggins from a few years ago. He just really like applies everything he has to getting to the rim in key moments of playoff games now, or play-in games. And I just really buy him as like a number 2 or number 3 star on a team that could go all the way. So
Yeah.
kudos to BI for all of his growth. Trey Murphy, I think might be the kind of guy that like you just bet the house on and hope that he's like the next SGA or the next Halliburton. I can't believe how good Trey Murphy is, how pure his stroke is, how athletic he was. I think it was eye-opening when I watched him in the dunk contest. I didn't realize he had that bounce, and it made me sort of
Mm-hmm.
reconsider his ceiling.
Yeah. Early in the
Yeah,
season when the Pelicans looked, like the number one seed, and God, every year they're going to be the team. I already know every year they're going to be the team that suckers me in and makes me think they're going to make a run, and then they'll inevitably run into injury issues. But if they could just get, I know Zion's our trigger word on this podcast, but if they could just get a healthy season from Zion. That team has so much talent between Trey Murphy, who's really been showing it all year long. And then that's before you even get to guys like Herb Jones and Alvarado, who missed a large portion of the season. My man EJ Liddell, who was my draft crush
yeah,
last year, who didn't play a minute for them this year, but I think can give them some valuable forward minutes next year. And yeah, Brandon Ingram, honestly, he's got so much polish in the mid range. He looks like a taller DeMar DeRozan at times,
yeah.
but with
and
even
and
more.
and with a 3-point stroke as well.
Yes,
His
yes.
three-pointer ebbs and flows, but he's definitely respected. He definitely brings that 3-point gravity as well. Trey, I regret putting Trey Murphy just now in a Tyrese Halliburton category because I think Tyrese was so young that it isn't
Mhm.
he's developed really quickly into a star, but I think it makes more sense. But like I think a lot of teams now are starting to think about who is like sort of Oladipo's breakout on the Pacers, McCall Bridges breakout on the Nets. And I think Trey Murphy could be one of those guys if he finds himself on another team in the next couple of years.
Yep.
So yeah, Trey Jones, Spurs. I don't know why I wrote his name down. I just love his self-awareness, and
Mhm.
I feel like he's efficient and he's a winning player who was on a losing team this year. And I'm curious to see what Trey Jones would look like on a relevant team. Kelly Olynyk. I think guys like Kelly Olynyk, I just can't believe how skilled he is as a playmaker.
Yep.
Uh, I watched just enough Jazz this year because I had him on multiple fantasy teams. to see like how often he was the point guard of that team, because their makeshift point guard was either Colin Sexton or Taylor Horton Tucker, and they were looking for playmaking kind of anywhere they could find it. And Kelly Olynyk can play on a playoff team, and I
Yep.
wrote him off a couple of years ago. I know we both picked the Suns in the Suns Clippers series, and Clippers just won game one. It looks like that series is going to be close. Do you still expect the Suns to come out of round one and play the Nuggets, who we presume will continue to steamroll the Wolves?
Yes. I do still have the Suns. Were Paul George to be playing in this series, if he came back, let's say by game four, I think I would be tempted to pick the Clippers in seven.
Yeah.
But without him, I think the deficit between I think KD and Kawhi are kind of, even top tier
Yeah.
stars, but the Booker, Ayton, CP is just a much higher level 2 through 4 than the Clippers have, with whether it's Gordon, Powell, Batum, Westbrook, it's Zubac. It's just not like the same level of players that we're comparing there. I
Yeah.
do have some doubts about the Suns long term because of sort of as you go deeper in their rotation past that top four, it gets pretty weak. But I do have the Suns winning. I think it'll be challenging for them though, because with this Clippers team, which shoots a ton of threes, like they like to get up 40 to 50 a game, and the Suns are a very low volume 3-point shooting team because Booker, KD, and Chris Paul are all sort of masters of the mid range. They are going to run into a bit of a math problem, as they did in game one, when the Clippers are hitting 18, 19, or 20 of those 53 pointers. And you have to shoot an absurdly high percentage from the mid range to be able to keep up with that and the extra points that the Clippers are getting from all of those shots. So I think game one
Yeah.
showed this is not going to be an easy series for the Suns. They were, I think, one of the biggest favorites in the West in any individual series coming into this, like minus 500.
I think they
And
were. I think were the favorite to come out of the West.
yeah,
Yeah, and I think, like you said, the math is on the Clippers side. I also think the Clippers have a slight coaching advantage. I'm just so in on Ty Lue as a playoff maneuverer. But it would still be a big shock, even if, if Paul George comes back, if he's missing half the series and the Suns lose, even with the new team that they have, that'll be pretty surprising to me, because like you said, it's like guys 3 through 5 or 2 through 5 are just on another level when Paul George is out.
yeah,
So yeah, we both expect, and the world expects, the Nuggets to handle the Wolves pretty smoothly. And so let's talk about what would be a truly crazy series in round two: Denver versus Phoenix,
yeah,
with both teams that expected all year to be playing multiple playoff series and competing for the whole thing.
absolutely. Yeah, I think I would give Denver the slight edge in that series. I'd probably pick them in 7 games.
Did
I
you
think
did you pick them? Do you have Denver winning that series today?
I have them winning that series today, and I had them winning that series before the playoffs started as
Yeah,
well. Um, I I think that it's going to be a great test for Jokic. I think, well, it doesn't seem like he's going to win his third straight MVP. Had he won his third straight MVP, I think there would be an intense amount of scrutiny and attention on him in these playoffs. It's almost, I mean, I think Russillo was talking about this earlier in the year, that it's almost weirdly better for him from a pressure standpoint if he doesn't
yeah,
win the MVP, or maybe Simmons was saying that. But it's going to really test a lot of his defensive ability with the amount of pick and roll that the Suns run and how comfortable they all are pulling up as shooters, because we saw it a couple years ago when the Nuggets had a very undermanned team and the Suns swept them in the second round. But the Suns' style of play can give Jokic problems. I think with the sort of refurbished team that he has around him, with getting guys back from injury, they'll be able to overcome. And he's just such a singularly dominant offensive force and raises that even in the playoffs, that I think they'll be able to overcome the Suns. And as I said, I'm lower on them because of, as the rotation goes on, you're really getting into guys who are more ninth, 10th men in the league, not fifth, sixth, and seventh. And I think that will come to bite them a little bit as the playoffs go on.
Yeah, I also just I think that Jamal Murray is closer to Devin Booker in a playoff series than probably most people think, because I've just seen Jamal Murray come through in some of the most important spots in that franchise's history, frankly, in the last few years. Um, and so yeah, Jokic is Jokic, Durant's Durant, and I think and I think that that Murray gets, like when he increases his volume in the playoffs, he's historically either maintained his efficiency or become more efficient. And I think the playoff reps matter, and I think that the new look Suns, it'll be kind of sad as a hopeless romantic. Like I don't want to believe you can trade for a guy mid-season and be ready, but maybe the talent is too great. I picked the Nuggets to win that series because I believe that they will have the best player in the series, and and maybe Booker, maybe Booker's the third best guy in that series. Most likely he is, but I don't think Murray's too far behind. I feel better about it if Michael Porter Jr. had developed in the last couple of years, like a lot of us hoped that he would. So that
Yep.
worries me because, if he's not making shots, the depth on that team, there's a big drop off pretty quickly. But KCP is a trusted playoff role player. Aaron Gordon has settled into the perfect role for him. And they have and Christian Brown, I think is a body. I think that he's has a rational confidence, and he might be the rare rookie that you can use to guard some of the Suns' bigger scorers. So I don't know. We'll see. But I picked the Nuggets, and anyone who says they know the way that series goes is full of shit.
Yep.
And okay, so let's see. Who do you have in Lakers Grizzlies?
I had Lakers in, I believe, 6 or 7 before the series started, and now I'm leaning towards 6 or even 5 for the Lakers, depending on this jaw injury. I do
Yeah.
think there's a chance the Grizzlies take game 2 because the Lakers have shown a propensity over the past few years to overlook opponents who they don't deem as being on their level. And I think as underdogs, weirdly, to the Grizzlies in game 1, I thought that they tend to play better in that spot. But when Jaw is out and the Grizzlies are sort of playing with hunger at home, being down 1-0, I think it's possible the Lakers could come out and lay an egg in game 2. But I do still have the Lakers winning that series. I think without Adams and Clark, the physicality of LeBron and AD is a little bit too much for the Grizzlies to match up with. And yes, the Lakers don't have an answer for Jaw, at least in terms of point of attack defenders, but their paint defense is still really good between Vanderbilt, Davis, and LeBron when he's locked in anyways. He's had some, let's say, up and down defensive performances so far this postseason.
Yeah.
But I do have the Lakers winning that series, and if Jaw is out for an extended period of time, I think it could go pretty quickly.
Yeah, I picked the Lakers before game 1 as well. I think if Jaw's healthy, it's still a really close series. But I think the Clark loss is the most important one. I know Adams is a great offensive rebounder, and maybe he's good to have in there with AD because AD looks really big against this current version of the Grizzlies. But I think the Lakers have just sneakily become a relatively deep roster, and Austin Reeves looks like he's built for the playoffs, and he's making millions of dollars every game now.
Yep.
And I too picked the Lakers to advance, which leads us to one of the more painful round 2s I think either of us will ever have to choose in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
If the Warriors can get their shit together and beat the Kings, which obviously we both picked them to do, it's Steph versus LeBron.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels kind of ridiculous talking about Steph versus LeBron when Steph's team is down 2-0. But we got to talk about it.
Yeah.
Golden State or LA?
So before the playoffs started, I
You pick Golden State.
kind of backed myself in, was like, fine, I'll take Golden State to win the West, just because it seemed like the bracket was breaking nicely for them. I didn't take the Kings very seriously as a first round opponent. I thought, as far as a road opponent goes, being able to be that close to who they were playing would help them with their road woes. Clearly, that hasn't been the case so far. But uh, so before the playoffs, I picked Golden State to win that. Now, I really don't know. I think the Lakers have, I mean, they've played Golden State pretty well this year. A lot of players have missed those various games, so it's a little hard to know what to take from that. I think they won the season series 3-1. Um, Anthony Davis has typically played pretty well against Golden State in his career, although a few games this year, Draymond's given him some problems. But I just really like the Lakers' depth of talent. I think when they lock in defensively, they have as high a defensive ceiling as any team in the NBA. Like the way they totally shut the water off for Minnesota in that play-in game, for instance, was really impressive. And I think the fact that they were able to pick up a game one win without LeBron or AD really going off offensively shows that they've kind of reshaped the roster in a real way that's helpful. So I'm wavering, I must say. I'm kind of leaning towards picking the Lakers in that hypothetical series now that we may never get, but uh, I don't know. Where are you feeling on that one?
Yeah, I picked the Warriors before the playoffs because I was confident. I'm really confident in the Wiggins we're seeing, and that's kind of what I was hoping for. I also think Clay's looked stronger and stronger, and I'm the biggest Dante DiVincenzo fan in the world, and I think that he can kind of be their Reeves in terms of the role player who rises to the occasion. I just thought that the Warriors' pace might be where LeBron's age and AD's fragility come to a head. Um,
Hmm.
and it's really painful to say that, but they won it all last year, so it's obviously, that I think that the Warriors turn it on when their backs are against the wall, and so I'm not going to quit on them yet. I did pick them before. Obviously, today the Vegas odds on a Lakers Warriors series look a lot different than they would have just a few days ago. But I picked the Warriors for what I think Wiggins can do to LeBron, and what I think Steph can do to the Lakers' lack of elite guard defenders. I think that Vanderbilt and AD have been awesome for them, and Reeves definitely plays hard defense. But they don't have a Davion Mitchell. They don't have an Avery Bradley type of guy to chase Steph around and at least make his life a little bit harder. Um, so yeah, that series would be absolutely crazy television, and I hope we still get to see it.
Yep.
But I just picked the Warriors because of their tradition, and
Hmm.
I think that they can outrun this Lakers team. So yeah, in that hypothetical conference finals that might never happen, Denver, Golden State, I picked the Warriors because I think that actually I think the Lakers are better equipped to beat the Warriors than the Nuggets. So I actually feel better about like picking the Warriors over the Nuggets than I do the Lakers, just because of how the Warriors are so great at punishing your non-switchable guys, putting them on an island. Um, and I do think that Jokic's defense is good enough to win a title, if he's the center of your team. But I think it's just a really tough matchup. And I know they didn't have Murray last year when they played in the first round. So it's not about that. But I think that if any team can hurt the Nuggets for the structure of their defense, it's the Warriors. And I actually think like there are teams that are worse than the Nuggets that are better equipped to match up with the Warriors. Like even the Clippers, I think, can cause Steph more problems. And so yeah, I picked the Warriors to make the finals again. Talk to me about your Western Conference Finals. It sounds like you had the same Western Conference Finals matchup.
Yes. Before the playoffs started, I had the same matchup and the Warriors beating them. Lest we forget, last year, not only did Steph cook against the Nuggets in and sort of exposing their defensive flaws. But that was also the series where Jordan Poole looked like a future Hall of Famer. Every time he came off a screen and sort of attacked Jokic downhill, he was getting whatever he wanted. That was when the vaunted Pool Party lineup was posting, net rating and lineup stats never before seen before it kind of got exposed as they went further on in the playoffs for not being very good defensively with Poole and just sort of the lack of size. But I think if it ends up being Warriors Nuggets, I would definitely pick the Warriors in that series. Um, Partially, that's a pick where if the Warriors make it to the conference finals, that means they've probably figured out some of the things that have been plaguing them early in these playoffs and some of their road woes. But I do think that matchup is just really tough for the Nuggets. Just the amount of movement that they have really puts Jokic in a tough spot, and they don't have anyone that can really bother Steph, I'd say. Their best defender. I mean, KCP can do a decent job maybe of chasing him off screens, but once you get past that, you Bruce Brown, you're really not looking at great defensive options on him. And we've seen it. We saw it in last year's playoffs. The Warriors can really cook against this Nuggets team, and I think it's going to be really hard for the Nuggets to outscore them. And I thought Draymond did a tremendous job on Jokic in their series last year, even though Jokic still ended up averaging 30, 12, and 5 or whatever it was. But
Yeah.
Draymond definitely made him work for it. So if it is that series, I would end up picking the Warriors as well, and that's what I picked before the playoffs.
Yeah. For whatever reason, Draymond's genius has been enough in that matchup that it's not like Jokic's stats inflate to the point that he can just carry them. Like you said, it's
Yep.
like he got his boring typical playoff line of 30, 15, and 5, 7 or
Yep.
whatever. And it's and there's still too much depth and too much um and too much guile on the Warriors side. And I think that they have role guys. I think Kuminga's ready to help like in certain matchups. When you need some pop, I think DiVincenzo can play in any series. So yeah. Let's go to the East. Because
Sure.
it looks like we did really poorly on the West based on the first couple games, but we're not
East is
gonna
more simple.
yeah. Um I think let's let's start with let's start with Sixers Nets, which is
Sure.
probably over. 2-0 Sixers. The Nets just don't have the firepower. Spencer Dinwiddie earned a lot of respect, I think, from a lot of people last year, with the way he settled into his role on the Mavs. And now I kind of hate the man, even though we've
Yep.
never met, because it was just an insane media appearance that he produced for us when he was talking trash back and forth with Kuzma. Kuzma just had the best year of his career and is just a far superior player. And Dinwiddie's out here saying that he thinks he's the number 2 guy on a contender. I think Luca actually Luca's so good that now Dinwiddie believes that he's a number 2. But now we're seeing right now what happens when he's the number 2 engine of your team. So yeah,
Yeah.
the Sixers are gonna win a series. Um, and I just want to say before we move on from this one that McCall Bridges, everyone thinks now that he's kind of like the new SGA or whatever, the new role guy who got his own team and exploded. I think we need to pump the brakes on that a little bit. Someone has to score the points for your team. I know he's done it on great splits, but his performance in the Dallas series last year really gave me pause.
Yeah.
And as good as he is off the ball, the way he spaces the floor and the way his shot creation has developed with all these like main guy reps he's gotten on the Nets, it's impressive. But I think we knew in Phoenix that he wasn't a finished product, and I'm still skeptical of his ability to make guys better with the ball in his hands, which is really, like that's what guys like Jalen Brunson and Donovan Mitchell are doing right now to take their teams to another level. So
Yeah.
I'm just saying let's be patient with McCall Bridges.
Sure. Quickly on Philly, Brooklyn. I agree. I think the Nets may have kind of thrown their best punch tonight. We may see. I don't think they're going to get a huge boost from a home crowd when the series shifts back to Brooklyn. So if I'm the Sixers, we need to finish that series in 5 games at the most. Because people remember them kind of melting down against Miami last year, but I think what people don't remember is a large reason that they lost that series was because they were up 3-0 against Toronto, and it seemed like they were going to sweep them. And then they let Toronto get 2 games back off of them and had to go to a game 6. And
Yeah.
in that game 6, which they won comfortably, Joel Embiid breaks his face in the last few minutes of the game. And he doesn't play for the first 2 games of the Miami series, and he's kind of a shell of himself when he comes back. So with the rickety nature of Joel Embiid's health, they need to prioritize getting this series done as quickly as possible, because Boston's certainly going to do that with Atlanta. I think we're going to talk about that soon. I don't think we need to spend more than a couple minutes on it. Atlanta can't do anything with Boston defensively, but Philly, I think, they definitely concerned me in the first half tonight. They came out with no energy, and I was like, geez, please don't make this like a 6-game series. I just want to see a competitive second round, and the longer this series goes, the less likely that is. So, and the last thing I'll say is Maxey was tremendous for them in the first half, keeping them afloat. And I will never get tired of watching him attack a closeout, because he just does it so fast, and there's
Yeah.
no one else like it,
And
honestly.
his ball and body control in transition is really something to behold. Like,
Yes.
he's one of these guys. He might not have Kyrie's handle, because nobody on the planet does, but like his handle, if it's a 2K rating, seems to go up 10 points like when he's in transition. And he's just like so coordinated when moving at top speed. His ability to make like incredibly difficult layups while moving at high velocity is
Yeah,
one of the most impressive individual skills in the league right now.
absolutely.
But yeah, I hope they can get out of it quickly and make it a close series too. But I am not picking the Sixers to beat the Celtics, because James Harden is on their roster. And
Yep.
I just refuse to do it. And I feel terrible for Embiid, because I think Embiid is the best player in that series. And this is a rare moment where I'm picking the team that doesn't have the best guy in the series.
Yeah.
It's simply because, you mentioned that we ranked the roll calls, we ranked each playoff team's role players before last year's playoffs, and I picked the Celtics first. I think you had them near the top of your list, but not quite the top. That was,
Yep.
nice feather in my hat. The Celtics still have that crazy deep roster. Derek White took a huge leap this year. He's gonna get a lot of all defense team votes, first or
Yeah.
second team. And I'm not the biggest Jason Tatum believer. I'm worried about the fact that he was tweeting about how cool it is that that he had like the best Celtic scoring season ever, because the stats are inflated, and I don't care if you beat Larry Bird's record. You have a lot of winning to do before we should even talk about it.
Yes.
But yeah, I can't pick Harden. I don't care if he went I don't care if he went vegan. I don't gluten-free, paleo, keto,
Oh,
Olympic. I don't care. I'm not picking James Harden. I think I just can't do it. And it's
he
because I know how badly you want a Giannis Embiid series.
I wanted so bad. We should have gotten it in 2021, but we didn't. There was a chance of getting it last year, but we didn't. And Harden was so bad tonight. I texted you and this is obvious, but they're not surviving that Harden performance against maybe anyone else in the
Yeah.
Eastern Conference. And you were like, thanks, Chat GPT. But it's true. Like Harden, his lack of aggression, or maybe lack of ability, honestly, to get to the rim is a little alarming at this point. He had a good game in game 1. Nothing dominant, but just sort of distributed the offense well.
Yeah.
But he took some terrible shots tonight that were like really bad misses, like straight backboard, barely getting it over
Yeah.
the rim at times.
And
And he just looked totally
the thing is,
disengaged.
If Harden averaged 30 points and 13 assists in this series, it wouldn't mean anything to me anyway. so
Yeah.
so when he looks lackadaisical against Brooklyn, like he has nowhere to go but down in my eyes. just because I question where his head will be at when the Celtics punch them in the mouth early in that series, which is just
Yeah.
inevitable. They're, Jaylen Brown will have a 16-point quarter, and the Celtics will be up double digits early in a game, and we'll find out a lot about where James Harden is in that moment. And
Yeah.
he's not Russ. I'm not that cynical about him, but I'm pretty damn cynical. Last year, um, last year was rough. We don't need to regurgitate all the Stephen A rant about whatever. He took 2 shots in the second half or whatever it was. We all remember what it looked like. So,
Yeah.
it's going to take a Celtic series win for James Harden to really like make me rethink who he is as a playoff guy.
Yeah. And the level of basketball that the Sixers have to play to win is going to jump so much between the Brooklyn series and the Boston series.
Yeah.
Like, they won't be able to get away with slow starts against Boston because, they were slow against Brooklyn. And then you looked up and Brooklyn was, only at about 43
Yeah.
points with a couple minutes to go in the first half. If you're that lackadaisical and slow against Boston,
Yeah.
they're putting up at least 60 in the first half. And yeah, I think the most telling game, honestly, was that game late in the season where Embiid put up 52 and they just like barely eked out a win against a Celtics team that didn't have, I don't think it had Rob Williams, didn't have
Yeah.
Jaylen Brown. It seems like there's something about that series which Philly just can't get over. And part of it is Boston's a really good team. I'm hoping that will be a good series. And I think it would take a Herculean effort from Embiid, which he's capable of.
Yeah.
But
It's really not fun when like Marcus Smart is your first assignment. And if he tweaks his ankle or needs a break or he's on the bench, Derek White is on you.
yeah,
And if Derek White, isn't on the floor, Jaylen Brown is in your face. Like, it's just the Celtics just have so much defensive firepower.
yeah,
Their like fifth option to guard your best scorer is like better than the Blazers' best guy. And
mhm,
yeah, just an embarrassment of riches on the defensive end. Uh,
yeah,
so we're gonna find out. We were talking about the Kings Warriors. Whatever happens in that series, even if the Warriors still figure it out, like the Kings are showing us how much the regular season matters. And
yes,
so I don't want to be dismissive of the Sixers. What they did in the regular season is real. But I just and I'm not as cynical about Doc as a lot of guys are.
mhm,
I think Doc is a pretty good coach, but I just will believe it when I see it. I'll believe.
yeah,
I and yeah, that's all I got on that.
yeah, absolutely,
Okay, so Bucks. Okay, Bucks Heat. Jimmy is gonna do Jimmy things, but if Giannis is healthy, the Bucks are gonna win that series.
yeah. I agree. I don't have a ton to say about that. I didn't actually watch the first game, but I've got Bucks in 5.
Yeah. So we're gonna assume that we were right about that one, and the Bucks can beat playoff Jimmy.
Yep,
And so let's move past that one and go to Cavs Knicks,
sure.
where you will be incapable of delivering rational analysis.
Yeah,
I texted you today and I really mean it. This isn't even for clicks. I think that that Cavs Knicks is more likely to end in 5 in the Cavs' favor than Bucks Heat is likely to end up in 5 games in the Bucks' favor. I think the talent disparity in Knicks Cavs is just too great.
mm,
And I'm such a Julius Randle hater. I don't think that you can win a playoff series when he's that important to what you do. And Jalen Brunson is just an absolutely beautiful player. And
he is.
whatever happens in this series, like put that Brunson game 1 performance in a bottle, cork it, and put it up on the wall. It was absolutely beautiful. Like what he does in the paint without even really jumping, the way he gets big men off their feet, the stuff he's been doing all year, the way
Yeah,
he dances and spins in the mid range. Yeah, it's something to behold.
yeah. I think we can save our in-depth Knicks Cavs discussion for our next episode, which won't be coming in too long because they do play a game 2 tomorrow, and I'm very curious to see how the Knicks approach that game and whether the Cavs can respond. But trying to be as objective as possible, I do think the Knicks have some distinct advantages that may not be going away, and that specifically just physicality advantages.
Yeah.
The Cavs, for all their talent, are not a particularly physical team. Garland's a finesse player. Mitchell's kind of a violent athlete, but he relies a lot on shooting pull-ups and he's not, I wouldn't call him a physical player, although he is very physically gifted. And then Mobley, for all of his defensive talent, is still very sort of light and not a bruiser. And Jared Allen is somewhat physical, but the Knicks really have physicality advantages at all five positions. Like maybe Mitch and Allen is a bit of a wash, but Mitch was honestly giving him the business on the offensive glass in game one. Randall, for his drawbacks, I do feel the need to defend his honor a little bit here. I think his game one really impressed me. I think physically he looks good, which as a Knicks fan I was encouraged by. I didn't think he looked very hampered by his ankle injury. And in the stretch in the first half where Brunson picked up 3 fouls, Randall kind of kept them afloat offensively. And then he grabbed a huge rebound down the stretch
Huge
to kind of
offensive
seal it.
board. I've
Yeah,
also
huge offensive board.
I've been impressed by Randall's defense.
Yes.
It never made sense that he was a bad defender because he moves well and he's so strong and he's slightly long and he's 6'9".
Mm-hmm.
Like he always had the physical tools to be a decent defender, and Mobley just couldn't move him.
Yeah.
Mobley is such a promising defensive star, and his offense has gotten steadily better.
Yeah.
But like Randall made him look like he had no touch around the rim just because he was falling away from it every time he drove.
Yeah. And conversely, Randall moves Mobley. Like if Randall
Yeah.
wants to get to the rim, Mobley on his own isn't going to do much to stop that. If they put Jared Allen on him, he can probably prevent him strength wise a little bit more. But I mean, Brunson's a physical player offensively, defensively, at least he competes.
Yeah.
Grimes is a really physical player. Hart, who I think will be starting before long in this series, super
Yeah.
physical player and the love of my life. Randall, very physical player, and then Mitch and Hartenstein, whoever they put in there, have been doing a good job on the board. So, long story short, neither of those teams is probably going to beat Milwaukee in the second round, but it is going to be one of probably the most entertaining first round series we get. Either that or Clippers, Warriors. Those ones are also good.
I think Warriors Kings is going to be the most fun series.
Probably.
I'm just not nearly as positive about the Knicks. I mean, I'm excited for you. I'm excited for the Knicks. I'm just what I think is going to happen in this series is still different than what you do. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that my dad has a pancreatitis because of what the Blazers got in return for Josh Hart. There's got to be a relation. It's been really hard to watch him do Josh Hart things for the Knicks, but yeah, it's just too hard for me to believe that Jalen Brunson is good enough to drag this team to 4 games over the Cavs. I like Darius Garland was sort of in and out of game one. Like, you know, he was a scoring threat, I think, like sort of in the third quarter and in parts of the fourth quarter, but he was relatively passive, maybe because Donovan Mitchell was just like such an alpha and such a beast. But I don't think Garland is going to be I don't think Garland is going to fade in the way he did in game one. Like I do believe that Garland's a stud. And so, you know, Brunson's definitely the better player right now, but like look at the rest of the matchups.
Yeah.
It's just like it's hard. It's really hard for me to see the Knicks pushing this to 7 even. But hey, they looked really, really tough in game one.
We
And
will see. I'm cautiously optimistic, but as a Knicks fan, I never allow myself to feel hope.
I also like last year, after the series that Donovan Mitchell had against the Mavs, I did that whole like post-mortem spiel on how I thought Donovan Mitchell was very underrated and like would be a good buy. And you know, that's aged as one of my better contributions to the human race.
He's scary to go against. I'll tell you that. Like he had a stretch. He had a couple stretches, both in the first and second halves, where he just hit deep pull up three after deep pull up three, and it seemed like the Knicks were guarding it well. He was just making these insane shots, and it's like if he's going to hit that, I don't really know what you're supposed to do.
Yeah,
But I will say the Cavs also do have a bit of sort of the Suns thing where their top four is really good, but
yeah,
they're sort of, I guess, what I'd call their shallow depth, like the 4 to 7 range, is not like when you're having Jetty Osman closing the game for you, and he hit a couple big shots, but having
yeah.
him trying to guard Brunson down the stretch, they tried a Coro, he couldn't hit a shot, and now he's also trying to complain about Brunson's foul drawing antics, which we'll see how Brunson responds to. But Okoro couldn't really get it going. Dean Wade couldn't get it going. Karis LeVert was really bad. Like
There's a
they're gonna
certain
have to get something there.
there's a certain just like oof when like Brunson scores in big moments because how physical he is and how hard earned some of his buckets are
Yeah,
inside the arc. Um, like I've kind of just come to expect Donovan Mitchell to be an offensive force in the playoffs. But the way that Brunson was doing it in game one felt even more impactful. I think
absolutely.
he scored fewer points, but it is really cool to see like those two guys who seem like they're in a similar category of like where that where the hell did they? I mean, Brunson more than Mitchell. Like Mitchell had a lot of moments in his career before a really rough round one last year. Um, but they're in the same category of like those guys just took their game to a whole nother stratosphere and
For sure.
we're watching them do crazy things.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think you probably picked the Cavs before the playoffs, right?
I did.
Okay. Hedge your happiness. So
Hmm.
Cavs Bucks. Uh I don't know. Do you want to talk a lot about it, or do we just say that Giannis is the best player in the world, and if he's healthy, the Bucks are winning?
I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
Go Giannis.
Okay, so Celtics Bucks. I think healthy Giannis, we both picked the Bucks because I remember when Celtics Bucks matched up in round two last year, and um, we both we both thought that it was going to be Celtics in 5 or 6 when Middleton was announced to be out. And then of course Giannis did what he did, forced his way to the free throw line, was significantly better than Tatum in most of those games. Drew, made winning plays left and right, and somehow the Bucks clawed their way to 7 and probably should have won the series. Except Jason Tatum had other thoughts in Game 6 in Milwaukee, had the
Yep.
best game of his
Yep.
career. Uh, so here we are with Chris healthy finally, and Giannis with some health question marks. But again, full strength Milwaukee. I'm taking them to get to the finals this year.
Absolutely. Me too. I think another uh underplayed factor from last year's playoffs is Brook Lopez was really kind of a shell of himself. And this
Yeah,
year he's not just himself, but he's
he's the
maybe the
best version of
best
himself ever.
version we've ever seen. Yeah. I mean, offensively, maybe he had some years in Brooklyn where he was better, but offensively, he's playing it close to as high a level as we've seen from him. And defensively, he's, defensive player of the year, finalist level good. Although I think it might have been announced that Jaren just won that. But uh,
Yeah,
with that, and then Middleton, some of the role players they've gotten will
this is the
definitely
best
be a
version
hard
of Brook
series.
Lopez we've ever seen.
Absolutely. So I'm picking Milwaukee in that series. I was just so impressed with what Giannis was able to do against the Boston team and kind of wear them down physically over the course of the series. But it'll be by no means an easy series. I'd pick Milwaukee in 6 or 7. And Middleton will need to play very well, which
Yeah,
the one silver lining from game one of the Bucks Heat series was that Middleton did play well. But I would pick Milwaukee in that.
yeah. There are Boston is at a point now where you know there have been rumors that Jaylen Brown isn't around for long, and if you're a Philly fan, you're really hoping that you make them look bad in the first 1 or 2 games of a Philly Boston series, and maybe the Celtics start to come apart because it's just been a few years now of them being really close but no cigar. Um, but I think like if the Sixers, assuming the Sixers can't break this Celtics core, I think that the Milwaukee could do some things to the fabric of that organization. That's how
Yes.
confident I am in Milwaukee. The level Drew's playing at, I know Bill Simmons gave him like second team all NBA because he was that good on defense and shot more efficiently than we're used to from him. So yeah, I think full strength Milwaukee is the best team in the league, which is
Mhm.
why I had the Bucks beating the Warriors in 6 games
Yeah.
in my pre-playoffs finals.
Check it out. I had the same thing. It's kind of wild. I
But
don't know if I'm still picking the Warriors to come out of the West. I think now I'm definitely wavering on that.
of
But
course, yeah.
before the playoffs, I had Bucks over Warriors, and now I have no idea who's going to come out of the West. And I hate how much and I can't tell if it's my heart or my head is telling me to pick the Lakers because that just feels stupid.
I think you make your picks before the season, and then you get the pre-playoff checkpoint where you can revise your
Hmm.
picks if you wish.
Yes.
But my picks now are set in stone. So here
Yep.
we are. The Warriors are down 2-0, and they're probably not as good as I thought they'd be in the playoffs, but I'm sticking with it. Wiggins looks like 2022 playoffs Andrew Wiggins. And so yeah, Bucks Warriors, Bucks in 6 because Giannis is the best player on the planet. Um and each guy knows their role to a T on that team.
Yep.
Jay Crowder. So Brooke took a step, Jay Crowder's there now. Obviously Chris is around. Like it's just I just think that team it will peak at the right time if Giannis isn't injured.
Absolutely. And that would be a wonderful matchup to try to see what Draymond would try to cook up to try to contain Giannis. It, I feel like historically when the teams play, it's usually a blowout either one way or the other. So, I mean, that would be between, Steph, who's sort of one of the, I mean, maybe him and LeBron are kind of the marquee stars in the NBA in terms of generating attention and viewership, and then Giannis, who's the best player in the league and should be marketed as like the next face of the league. I think that'd be a great series. I have no idea if we're going to get it because the West is so volatile, but regardless of who comes out of
Yeah.
the West, I've got Milwaukee winning the finals.
I think like you've got defenses with great point of attack defenders, like the Bulls, like Alex Caruso, for instance, and then but if you get past Alex Caruso, you're getting to the rim and it's Vucevic.
Yeah.
And like the Jazz we saw for years with Gobert, it was like they had no defending on the perimeter, but they funnel everything to the rim because Gobert will mess with your shot. Uh,
Hmm.
it's pretty crazy that a team with the Bucks have 2 elite rim protectors, and at the point of attack, they've got Drew and now Jay Crowder. Um, so
Javon Carter too. He might be
yeah,
useful
yeah,
against
and
Steph in a series.
Javon Carter. So it's like pick your poison with that defense. They'll pester you on the perimeter, and if you get to the rim, they've got 2 massive human beings with a knack for changing shots. Uh, so yeah, I think it's going to be too much, and I am pro Grayson Allen. I think that he's an irrational confidence guy. He probably thinks he's better than he is, and I think sometimes you need that in the playoffs.
Fair enough. Yeah, I agree. Go Bucks. Bucks in 5. Knicks in 3. Let's go.
I think, all right, we'll be back tomorrow to talk Knicks Cavs. I think now that we've given our picks, we should just like do some rapid reactions to each of these games.
Hmm.
So be ready to talk Julius Randle body language, Evan Mobley lack of girth, uh, Donovan Mitchell better than Dame, all of these terrible things
Yep.
as we see what happens in that series. All right,
Yep. I'll be glued to the couch.
be back soon. Peace.